The last few Sundays, Reverend John and I have been reflecting on various questions of faith. And this week's question theme was, has there ever been a time in your life when you've lost your faith? I can remember a time early on in my ministry when a woman came to speak to me and declared that she had lost her faith. She was the only person I can recall doing that in close to 25 years of my ministry since ordination. I suppose there have been other people who have lost their faith, but perhaps she was the only one who was brave enough or took the time to tell me. To lose faith in another usually results from one person not acting in a way that the other expected. There is often a sense of distrust or a sense of betrayal. To lose faith in another is to stop believing, perhaps, that they still have your best interest at heart, or that you don't feel that they have your back. I suspect it means you have been hurt or disappointed in the other. I think losing faith and losing trust in another are fairly close. I suppose that there might have been many lose faith in Jesus because after waiting for generations for the Messiah to come, a baby born in a stable was not the expected arrival of the one whom they thought would save them from their bondage and slavery. But Jesus was always like that. Even though he was to be King of the Jews, he always spoke more of being a servant. The contrast of people's expectation of Jesus' reign was described in this morning's reading read by Diane. I personally came close to losing my faith when my first marriage ended. I truly had thought that God had had a hand in my meeting and eventually marrying my first husband. We met at theological school. He was best friends with a fellow that I highly respected. His former minister had become my minister, so I felt besides being terribly handsome, good-humored, and smart, he had a faith and a sense of call to ministry. And I thought that that would take us both into a future of shared ministry. But that did not happen. In fact, he left the church altogether, and I was left with 2 children in diapers trying to get by. When I look back on it, it was an incredibly painful time. I felt betrayed, confused, and more importantly, questioned my ability to understand what God wanted of me. I think I was more devastated, actually, by the sense of not understanding what God wanted than actually that sense of failing in my marriage. But I was surrounded by amazing friends whose faith guided me, and they encouraged me and loved me when I was at my lowest. I had family who still believed in me and what I could accomplish. I had 2 beautiful children. I realized I still had a strong sense of call to ministry, and so I pursued it thanks again to the incredible support and encouragement of family and friends. I guess you could say they carried me that period of time. I suppose that I would have to say that after a brief time of confusion and questioning in a time of deep pain and despair, I gradually found my way back to where I felt called to be and realized that God had given me the strength and perseverance to navigate my 1.5 years of turmoil. I often quote the phrase from the book of the same title in describing that time as a severe mercy. A severe mercy. Strangely, as I was, and I say strangely, once you hear the story, you'll think, yeah, that is strange. But strangely, as I was thinking about this sermon topic, my mind went back to when my daughter was just turning 8, and we had just moved to a new neighborhood. Her birthday was in the summer, so we decided to hold off celebrating until she had made some new friends at her new school. So we had a Halloween-themed party. 12 giggly, excited girls. We carved a dozen pumpkins and ate a witch-shaped cake. The grand finale was a pumpkin-shaped piñata hanging in our front hall that each party guest, along with a very enthusiastic younger brother, took a whack at. After great anticipation and excitement, Amanda had told all her friends about the piñata in advance. The moment arrived when one hit of the bat caused the paper pumpkin to split open, and all the kids swarmed to get their handful of candy on the floor. The only problem was that, unbeknownst to me, having never purchased a piñata pumpkin before, that you actually have to stuff it with candy yourself. I don't know what was greater, the horror on my daughter's face or mine. I had no idea. Every piñata I ever saw, you whack it, the candy fell out. I missed that step. You can imagine the shock, not to mention the tears from my daughter when the much anticipated moment came to a shattering thud. As I said at the beginning of this story, strangely, I thought of this incident in terms of faith. I sometimes think we expect our faith to hold fast when all that life will whack at it, but it only works if we put something into it to prepare for that. We need to nurture and grow our faith intentionally, otherwise we might find it letting us down when we need it the most. I shared the idea of using this illustration with my daughter last night, and it led us into a really deep conversation about what faith meant for each of us. And we realized that in a way, faith is perhaps something that we humans construct. It comes out of our own need of knowing we are not alone and that someone will stand by us. And sometimes when we are disappointed or our lives work out in a way that we didn't plan, we can blame God. And yet I do truly believe that God is with us always. And our way is not always God's way. Do I think God planned for me to fall hopelessly in love with a guy who would betray and disappoint me? Of course not. Did I learn incredible things about myself and the direction of my life and the choices I made in my future? Of course I did. Faith, I believe, is built by experience, nurturing, an openness to the new. Like any relationship, it strengthens as it is bent and pulled. Faith, you might say, is a human emotion, something that can wax and wane. It can be built out of our expectations, and perhaps not always the best or most appropriate. Sometimes it holds us to one idea when another might be better. We could say that being here today to witness Henry's baptism is an act of faith. We pray that he will grow in his faith throughout all of the ups and downs of life that will offer him. And because many of us here have years more experience of building our faith and our understanding of it, perhaps we have something valuable to share with him. When the woman who came to me to say that she had lost her faith, I realized that there wasn't really anything I could actually say to her that would make her feel she'd got it back. I realized it was the journey that she was on with God at that time. All I could offer her really was to say that for the time being, I hoped that I had enough faith for both of us until such a time as hers returned. I don't honestly know if it did or not. I do still pray for her. I do believe in God. I do have faith, but it is not the same faith I had as a young woman. It has stretched and been bent and torn, refurbished, rebuilt, reconstructed as my understanding of myself and God has grown and matured over the years. I feel now that I have enough faith that it will sustain me in whatever my life may hold for me. It's kind of like that feeling when you first get married, and for a while, it's kind of like that feeling when you've been married for a while. And unlike the early days when you have an argument and think, oh, okay, that's it, I'm leaving, this is done, I'm over, you realize, okay, so here we are again. And why am I feeling this way? And what do I need to do to understand this situation and that of my partners better to get us through this? Do you know what I mean? One of the dictionaries says, faith is the basic ingredient to begin a relationship with God. I found that really interesting. It's the basic ingredient to begin a relationship with God. In Hebrews chapter 11 says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen." I think faith is a lifelong relationship. We're in it for the long term. It can change and grow and bend and twist and turn all along the way. And it can be whacked and split open, but it will never be empty, because God's love fills all of our empty spaces, now and always, especially when we need it the most. Amen.